The champagne glass trembles in my hand as my sister Angela stands before the gathered executives at Hartwell Industries' inauguration party. I watch her cold blue eyes scan the room before landing on me. "You're fired, Rodney. Security will escort you out." The room falls silent. I set down my glass and remove my guest badge, placing it carefully on the mahogany table. "Tell Mom and Dad the board will meet in 3 hours." I reply calmly, watching her confident smile falter for the first time in 20 years. 3 months earlier, I never imagined this moment would come. I was cleaning out Grandfather William's old desk in the basement storage room when I discovered the leather portfolio wedged behind a stuck drawer. Inside were documents that would change everything I thought I knew about Hartwell Industries and my place in it. The papers were yellowed with age, but the legal language was crystal clear. Grandfather's original company charter from 1947 contained provisions I had never heard discussed at family dinners or board meetings. According to the founding documents, succession of leadership required approval from someone holding at least 20% ownership of company stock. More importantly, bloodline succession rights automatically transferred to male heirs upon reaching age 25, regardless of parental preferences. My hands shook as I read the inheritance documentation. Through a series of trust transfers and stock redistributions that had occurred when I turned 25 3 years ago, I legally owned 22% of Hartwell Industries. Angela, despite being groomed for leadership since college, held only 15%. Our parents controlled 35% between them, with the remaining 28% distributed among early investors and board members. Nobody knew about my ownership stake because the transfers had been processed through an automated trust system Grandfather established decades ago. The family lawyer Samuel Brennan had handled the paperwork quietly, assuming our parents were aware of the inheritance structure. Meanwhile, Angela had been positioning herself for the CEO role our parents promised her, completely unaware that her appointment violated the company's foundational bylaws. I spent weeks researching every detail, consulting with Samuel in confidential meetings at his downtown Chicago office. The elderly attorney was shocked to learn that Harold and Eleanor had never informed their children about the charter requirements. He produced box after box of documentation, showing how the succession was supposed to work compared to how Angela's inauguration was actually being planned. "Your grandfather was very specific about maintaining family control." Samuel explained during one of our meetings, his weathered fingers tracing the original signatures on the charter. He wanted to ensure that no outside forces could manipulate the company leadership through emotional manipulation or favoritism. The legal structure was designed to protect the business first, family dynamics second. The more I learned, the more I understood why Angela had been keeping me isolated from strategic decisions over the past 5 years. She convinced our parents that my talents were better suited for operations management, while she handled the big picture responsibilities. Every time I suggested improvements or questioned certain expenditures, she would redirect the conversation or schedule private meetings with Mom and Dad that somehow never included me. I began reaching out quietly to key board members, starting with Margaret Foster, who had worked with Grandfather since the company's early expansion phase. Margaret was surprised to learn about the charter provisions, and even more concerned when I mentioned some financial irregularities I had noticed in the operational budgets. "Rodney, I had no idea you held such significant ownership," Margaret confided during our lunch meeting at the Palmer House. "The board has been operating under the assumption that Angela's appointment was legally straightforward. If what you're telling me is accurate, we need to review every decision made over the past 6 months." James Wellington, another longtime board member and family friend, expressed similar concerns when I approached him. "Your sister has been very controlling about information flow," he admitted. "We've asked for detailed financial reports several times, but she always provides summaries instead of the comprehensive documentation we requested. Patricia Hayes, the board's newest member and former federal prosecutor, was particularly interested in the legal implications. If the board approved Angela's appointment without proper authority, every decision she makes as CEO could be challenged in court, she warned. We're looking at potential liability issues that could affect the entire company. As the inauguration party approached, I made a strategic decision that surprised even Samuel. Instead of challenging Angela's appointment beforehand, I would let her take the CEO position and reveal the legal problems afterward. This would demonstrate to the board and our parents exactly how Angela operated when she believed she held complete control. My loyal assistant David Park helped me document everything that happened in the weeks leading up to the party. David had worked in various departments throughout the company and noticed patterns of favoritism and questionable spending that aligned with my concerns. Susan Miller, one of our most experienced accountants, provided additional insights about budget discrepancies that Angela had been dismissing as operational adjustments. The night before the party, I sat in my apartment reviewing all the evidence Samuel and I had compiled. Bank records, board meeting minutes, employee complaints, and legal documentation painted a clear picture of systematic problems that went far beyond simple sibling rivalry. Angela had been making decisions that prioritized her personal image over company welfare, and our parents had been enabling her behavior without understanding the legal ramifications. Walking through downtown Chicago after Angela's public humiliation, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and determination. 28 years of family dynamics were about to change forever, but the company grandfather built deserved better than the chaos Angela was creating. The 3-hour countdown to the board meeting gave me time to prepare for the most difficult conversation of my life. Samuel was waiting at his office with everything we needed to present a compelling case to the board. The legal documentation was irrefutable, but I knew the emotional cost of challenging my sister would reverberate through our family for years to come. Still, integrity demanded action even when that action meant potentially destroying the relationships that had defined my entire childhood. Samuel Brennan's law office felt like stepping back in time, with its dark wood paneling and leather-bound legal volumes lining every wall. He had been our family's attorney for over 30 years, and his expression was grave as he spread the financial documents across his conference table. "Rodney, what I'm about to show you goes beyond inheritance disputes," Samuel said, adjusting his reading glasses. "We have evidence of systematic financial misconduct that could constitute criminal fraud. The man who brought this evidence forward was Thomas Richardson Hartwell Industries finance director for the past 8 years. Thomas had requested this meeting through Samuel because he feared retaliation if he approached our family directly." His hands trembled slightly as he opened his briefcase and began arranging papers with methodical precision. "I've been documenting irregularities for 18 months. Thomas explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "At first I thought there might be legitimate explanations, but the patterns became impossible to ignore." The evidence was staggering. Angela had been using company funds to purchase a vacation home in Martha's Vineyard, listing it as a corporate retreat facility that was never used for business purposes. Luxury car leases for vehicles she drove personally were categorized as executive transportation expenses. Private jet flights to European destinations appeared in the budget as international market research, but the itineraries matched her social media posts from personal vacations. The total amount diverted over the past 3 years exceeds $800,000. Thomas continued, pointing to a detailed spreadsheet. "She's been very careful to spread the expenses across different budget categories, making them difficult to detect during standard audits." Samuel leaned back in his chair, his face reflecting decades of legal experience with corporate malfeasance. "Thomas came to me because he discovered Angela was planning to transfer these expenses to operational budgets under your oversight, Rodney. She was setting up a scenario where you would appear responsible for the missing funds. My stomach dropped as the full implications became clear. Angela hadn't just been stealing from the company. She was preparing to frame me for her crimes. The sister I had grown up with, who used to build blanket forts with me on rainy afternoons, was planning to destroy my reputation and potentially send me to prison to cover her tracks. "Why didn't you report this earlier?" I asked Thomas, trying to keep accusation out of my voice. "Your grandfather founded this company on principles of integrity and family values." Thomas replied, his eyes filling with moisture. I hoped Angela would recognize her mistakes and make restitution voluntarily. When I tried to discuss the discrepancies with her, she threatened to have me fired for insubordination. That's when I knew the situation required outside intervention. Samuel began making phone calls to arrange the emergency board meeting while I struggled to process the magnitude of Angela's deception. Each conversation revealed how thoroughly she had manipulated information flow to board members, our parents, and key employees. Margaret Foster confirmed that she had never received the detailed financial reports she requested. James Wellington mentioned that Angela always deflected questions about specific expenditures with vague explanations about competitive positioning. She fired 3 employees over the past year who questioned unusual expenses. Thomas added producing termination documentation. Jenny Martinez from Accounts Payable, Robert Chen from Purchasing, and Lisa Thompson from Legal Compliance. All 3 tried to follow proper procedures for expense verification, and Angela eliminated them for doing their jobs correctly. The pattern of behavior extended beyond financial misconduct into systematic suppression of accountability measures. Angela had convinced our parents that employee turnover was normal in a competitive business environment, while secretly removing anyone who might expose her illegal activities. Samuel finished his calls and returned to the conference table. The emergency board meeting is scheduled for 7 o'clock at the Chicago Athletic Association. All 6 voting members will attend along with your parents. I've prepared a presentation that documents the legal violations and financial evidence without revealing our sources until Thomas chooses to come forward publicly. "What happens to Angela when this becomes public?" I asked, realizing that my question would determine whether our family could ever recover from this crisis. "That depends on several factors," Samuel replied carefully. "If she cooperates fully and makes restitution, we might be able to resolve this through civil procedures. If she continues denying responsibility or attempts to shift blame, criminal prosecution becomes likely. The choice will ultimately be hers." Thomas gathered his documents with obvious reluctance. "I never wanted to destroy your family, Rodney, but I couldn't stand by and watch the company your grandfather built get destroyed by someone who views it as her personal bank account." As we prepared to leave Samuel's office, I realized that the next few hours would determine not only Angela's future, but the survival of Hartwell Industries as an ethical business entity. The evidence against her was overwhelming, but presenting it would force our entire family to confront truths that would change our relationships forever. Walking toward the Chicago Athletic Association, I thought about Grandfather William and the values he had tried to instill in both Angela and me during childhood visits to his office. He used to say that character was revealed not by success, but by how someone handled the temptation that success created. Angela had failed that test spectacularly, but now I faced my own character examination. How I handled this crisis would define not only my future as a leader, but my identity as a brother and son. The weight of responsibility felt heavier with each step toward the meeting that would expose my sister's crimes and potentially send her to prison. Justice demanded action, but love complicated every decision. The next 3 hours would test everything I believed about family loyalty and the price of doing what was right. The private conference room at the Chicago Athletic Association carried the scent of old leather and polished mahogany. 6 board members sat around the oval table, their faces reflecting confusion about the emergency meeting's purpose. Margaret Foster checked her watch repeatedly while James Wellington reviewed the agenda Samuel had provided. Patricia Hayes took notes with the methodical precision of her prosecutorial background. I stood at the head of the table, my presentation materials organized, but my heart racing as I prepared to destroy my sister's reputation and possibly her freedom. Samuel sat beside me, ready to provide legal context for the evidence we were about to present. Thank you all for gathering on such short notice. I began, my voice steadier than I felt. What I'm about to share will be difficult, but it's necessary to protect Hartwell Industries and honor the ethical standards our grandfather established. I had just begun explaining the inheritance documentation when the conference room doors burst open. Angela strode in with 2 security guards, her face flushed and her carefully styled hair slightly disheveled. Behind her walked our parents, Harold and Eleanor, both looking confused and concerned. This meeting is unauthorized and illegal. Angela announced, her voice carrying the commanding tone she used when intimidating employees. Rodney has been showing signs of mental instability for months, and I have evidence that he's been embezzling funds to finance this obsession with challenging legitimate corporate decisions. My stomach lurched as Angela produced a manila folder thick with documents. She spread papers across the table with theatrical precision, pointing to bank records and financial statements that appeared to show unauthorized transfers from company accounts to personal investments under my name. These documents prove that Rodney created fake consulting contracts to funnel money into offshore accounts. Angela continued, her performance becoming more convincing with each accusation. The board needs to understand that we're dealing with someone who has become dangerously delusional about his role in this company. Margaret Foster picked up one of the documents, her experienced eyes scanning the details. These appear to show significant irregularities, Angela. When did you discover this? I've been investigating suspicions for several weeks, Angela replied, producing additional papers with forged email correspondence. Rodney has been using his operational access to manipulate financial records and create fraudulent documentation. This emergency meeting is probably his attempt to shift blame before his crimes are discovered. The board members exchanged worried glances as Angela continued building her case against me. The fabricated evidence was sophisticated with backdated emails and financial transactions that would require forensic accounting to disprove. Several documents bore signatures that looked remarkably similar to my handwriting. I think we need to contact law enforcement, James Wellington said, slowly studying the forged bank statements. If these allegations are accurate, we're looking at serious federal crimes. My mouth went dry as I realized how thoroughly Angela had prepared for this confrontation. She had anticipated my challenge to her authority and created an elaborate frame-up designed to make me appear guilty of exactly the crimes she had committed. The board was beginning to believe her performance, and my credibility was evaporating with each document she presented. Samuel started to speak, but Angela cut him off with a dismissive gesture. Samuel has been compromised by Rodney's manipulation, she claimed. This entire presentation is based on fabricated legal theories and misrepresented inheritance documents. I suggest we end this meeting immediately and contact federal investigators to handle what appears to be an attempted corporate coup. That's when Thomas Richardson stood up from his chair in the corner of the room. I hadn't noticed him arrive, but his presence changed everything about the confrontation's dynamics. Actually, Angela, I think the board needs to see some additional evidence before making any decisions, Thomas said quietly, producing a tablet computer from his briefcase. Angela's confident expression wavered for the first time since she had entered the room. Thomas, you weren't invited to this meeting. Your presence here is inappropriate and potentially conflicts with your employment obligations. I have video evidence of you creating those fraudulent documents, Thomas replied, his voice growing stronger. Hidden security cameras in my office recorded you using Rodney's computer login after hours to generate the fake banking records and email communications you just presented. The room fell completely silent as Thomas connected his tablet to the conference room's presentation screen. Security footage appeared, showing Angela in the finance office at 11:30 on a Tuesday night 3 weeks earlier. The timestamp was clearly visible as she used my computer credentials to access financial databases and create the documentation she was now using to frame me. This footage shows you generating false consulting contracts and backdating email communications. Thomas continued advancing the video to show Angela printing documents and carefully placing them in folders. You also used Rodney's login to create fake offshore account records that don't actually exist. Angela's face went pale as the evidence of her deception played out in front of the board members and our parents. The video was irrefutable proof that she had fabricated the entire case against me, down to forging my signatures on documents that I had never seen before this meeting. The consulting contracts she claims Rodney created were actually generated by Angela using his computer access, Thomas explained. She planned to present them as evidence of his embezzlement, while simultaneously using them to justify transferring her own illegal expenditures to his operational budgets. Patricia Hayes leaned forward, her prosecutorial instincts engaging as she studied the video evidence. Angela, these recordings appear to show systematic document fraud and attempted evidence tampering. Do you have any explanation for why you were in the finance office using another employee's computer credentials to create financial records? Angela's carefully constructed performance began collapsing as the board members realized the extent of her deception. Her shoulders sagged, and her hands trembled as she struggled to maintain her composure in front of our parents and the corporate leaders she had been trying to manipulate. "I can explain everything," Angela whispered, but her voice lacked the authority and confidence she had displayed just minutes earlier. "There are circumstances that justify my actions, considerations that require more context than you understand." Harold and Eleanor sat in stunned silence as they watched their daughter's reputation crumble in real time. The golden child they had been grooming for leadership was revealed as a criminal who had been stealing from the family business and attempting to frame her brother for her crimes. Samuel stood up and began distributing the actual financial evidence that Thomas had compiled over 18 months of careful documentation. "What you're seeing is systematic embezzlement totaling over $800,000, combined with document fraud and attempted evidence tampering. This goes far beyond sibling rivalry or corporate politics." The board voted unanimously to suspend Angela pending a full investigation, while our parents struggled to process the reality that their daughter had been lying to them for years. The inauguration party that morning felt like it had happened in a different lifetime before our family's foundation cracked open to reveal the corruption that had been growing beneath the surface. The conference room emptied slowly as board members filed out in uncomfortable silence, leaving only our family and Samuel behind. Angela sat slumped in her chair, her elaborate facade completely stripped away. Harold and Eleanor remained frozen in their seats, staring at the evidence spread across the table like casualties of an emotional earthquake. "How long have you known?" Angela asked our parents, her voice hollow and defeated. Harold cleared his throat, his weathered hands folding and unfolding as he struggled to find words. "We knew you were struggling with certain aspects of leadership," he admitted slowly. "Your mother and I suspected that pressure was affecting your judgment, but we hoped guidance and experience would help you mature into the role." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears as she reached toward Angela, then pulled her hand back uncertainly. "We saw warning signs during your college years," she whispered. "The academic dishonesty incident that we handled privately, the credit card problems that we resolved without consequences. We thought love and support would help you overcome those tendencies." "You enabled her," I said, immediately regretting the accusation when I saw the pain in my mother's face. "Yes," Harold replied simply. "We enabled her because we were terrified of losing her. Every time Angela made a mistake addressing it, properly risked driving her away from the family. We chose preservation of relationship over accountability, and we created the monster that she became." Angela flinched at the word monster, but didn't deny its accuracy. "I hated you, Rodney," she said, looking directly at me for the first time since the video evidence had destroyed her credibility. "I hated how easily everything came to you, how Mom and Dad trusted you without question, how employees respected you without fear. Everything came easily to me." I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. "Angela, you were the chosen one from childhood. Private schools, internships, graduate programs, executive training. I worked in the warehouse loading trucks while you attended leadership conferences in Europe." "But they loved you," Angela replied, tears streaming down her face. "When you suggested improvements, they listened thoughtfully. When I made suggestions, they smiled and nodded, but I could see doubt in their eyes. They were grooming me for leadership while secretly hoping you would somehow take over instead." Eleanor made a small sound of protest, but Harold placed his hand on her arm. "She's not entirely wrong," he said heavily. "We gave Angela opportunities, but we gave Rodney our genuine respect. The operational experience we insisted he gain was our way of preparing him to eventually lead the company, while we hoped Angela would develop the character necessary to earn that respect." Samuel cleared his throat gently. "This conversation is important for your family healing, but we need to address the legal implications of Angela's actions. The evidence Thomas provided establishes multiple felonies that typically result in federal prosecution. However, given the family's circumstances and her cooperation, we might be able to negotiate alternative consequences." Angela looked up sharply. "What kind of alternative consequences?" "Complete financial restitution, supervised psychological evaluation and treatment, and gradual supervised reintegration into the company if psychological assessment indicates genuine rehabilitation," Samuel explained. "The board would need to approve any arrangement, and you would remain under strict oversight for a minimum of 2 years." "And if I refuse those terms?" Angela asked. "Federal prosecution becomes inevitable," Samuel replied matter-of-factly. "Corporate embezzlement exceeding $500,000 typically results in 5 to 10 years in federal prison, plus permanent prohibition from corporate leadership roles." Harold and Eleanor exchanged looks that communicated decades of marriage and shared parental anxiety. "Angela, you need professional help," Eleanor said firmly. "This conversation has revealed patterns of thinking and behavior that require intervention, regardless of legal consequences." "I've been seeing Dr. Catherine Morris for 3 months, Angela admitted quietly. "I started therapy when I realized how much I resented Rodney's existence, but I wasn't honest about the extent of my problems. She's been trying to help me understand why I need to control everyone around me." "Why didn't you tell us you were in therapy?" I asked. "Because admitting I needed help meant admitting that everything I had built was based on lies and manipulation," Angela replied. "Dr. Morris kept asking me to examine my motivation for various decisions, and I realized that most of my choices were designed to prove I was better than you rather than to actually benefit the company." Samuel began packing his documents while our parents processed the complexity of Angela's confession. "I recommend family therapy in addition to individual treatment for Angela," he suggested. "The dynamics that created this situation affect all 4 of you, and sustainable resolution requires everyone to understand their role in the dysfunction. What happens to the company while we work through this mess?" I asked, realizing that Hartwell Industries needed stable leadership regardless of our family drama. "You assume the CEO role immediately," Harold said. "The board has already voted on succession, and your ownership stake provides legal authority. Angela can potentially return to a supervised position after demonstrating genuine rehabilitation, but the company can't wait for our family to heal." Angela nodded slowly. "I need to make a public statement accepting responsibility and apologizing to employees whose lives I disrupted," she said. Jenny Martinez, Robert Chen, and Lisa Thompson deserve to know why they were fired and to receive compensation for the damages my actions caused to their careers. That's a good start, Eleanor said, reaching across the table to squeeze Angela's hand. Accountability without defensiveness shows more maturity than you've demonstrated in years. As we prepared to leave the conference room, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Justice was being served, but the cost included shattering my childhood image of my sister as someone I could trust and admire. The next few months would test whether our family relationships could survive the truth about who we really were beneath the surface we had maintained for decades. Angela stood up slowly, her posture reflecting exhaustion and defeat. "Rodney, I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "But I want you to know that underneath all the jealousy and manipulation, I was genuinely proud of the man you became, despite my attempts to undermine you. You deserved better from a sister. You deserved better from parents who confused enabling with love," I replied, looking at Harold and Eleanor. "We all made mistakes that contributed to this situation. The question now is whether we can learn from them and build something healthier going forward." Samuel gathered his briefcase and coat, preparing to leave our family to continue processing the emotional aftermath of the day's revelations. "I'll contact Dr. Morris about family therapy scheduling," he said. "Healing will take time, but the foundation for recovery exists if everyone commits to honesty and accountability." Walking out of the Chicago Athletic Association, I realized that becoming CEO was the least challenging aspect of the journey ahead. Rebuilding trust with Angela, helping our parents process their guilt and regret, and creating a company culture based on integrity rather than manipulation would require years of consistent effort and emotional courage. 3 weeks later, Hartwell Industries felt like a completely different workplace. I had moved into the CEO office, but the transition was more complex than simply changing nameplate and administrative access. Every decision required careful consideration of how it would affect employees who had lived through years of Angela's erratic leadership and favoritism. Angela was attending intensive therapy sessions with Dr. Catherine Morris 3 times per week, while also meeting with federal investigators to provide complete documentation of her financial misconduct. She had moved back into our parents' house temporarily, both for financial reasons and because isolation was making her depression worse. I was reviewing operational reports when my assistant David Park knocked on the office door with an urgent expression. "Rodney, we have a serious problem," he said, closing the door behind him. "Thomas Richardson just received a concerning phone call that might threaten the entire company." Thomas entered my office carrying a folder thick with printed emails and financial documents. His face was pale, and his hands trembled slightly as he sat down across from my desk. "I've been contacted by Bradley Stone from Meridian Corp," Thomas explained. "He claims to have insider information about our recent leadership transition and financial irregularities. He's suggesting that Meridian might be interested in acquiring Hartwell Industries at a significant discount due to our corporate instability." My stomach dropped as I realized the implications. How would Meridian have insider information about our situation? "That's what I was afraid you'd ask," Thomas replied, opening his folder to reveal printed emails and text message exchanges. These communications are between Angela and Bradley Stone, dating back 8 months. It appears they were involved in a personal relationship during the period when she was embezzling funds. The evidence was damning. Angela had been sharing confidential financial information, strategic planning documents, and internal personnel matters with someone who worked for a competitor specifically focused on hostile corporate acquisitions. Her personal relationship had compromised virtually every aspect of Hartwell Industries' business security. "How much does Meridian know about our operations?" I asked, scanning through the email exchanges that revealed extensive discussion of our client relationships, profit margins, and expansion plans. "Everything," Thomas said grimly. Angela provided Bradley with access to financial reports, strategic planning documents, employee performance reviews, and competitive analysis data. He has enough information to target our most vulnerable areas and potentially steal our major clients. David pulled up Meridian Corp's recent acquisition history on his laptop. They specialize in acquiring family businesses experiencing leadership transitions, he reported. Their typical strategy involves exploiting internal conflicts and financial instability to force below-market sales to distressed owners. I reached for my phone to call Angela, then realized that involving her in strategy discussions might make the situation worse. Instead, I asked Thomas to contact Samuel Brennan for legal advice about how to handle corporate espionage and potential takeover threats. There's more, Thomas continued reluctantly. Bradley has been pressuring Angela to provide additional information about our current financial status and board member relationships. She's been avoiding his contacts since starting therapy, but he's becoming increasingly aggressive about maintaining communication. The phone in my office rang as we were discussing response options. David answered, and his expression became even more concerned. "It's Angela," he said. "She says it's urgent and related to Meridian Corp." I took the call hesitantly, unsure whether Angela was contacting me to help or to create additional problems. Her voice sounded shaky and frightened when she began speaking. "Rodney Bradley has been calling and texting constantly since the board meeting," Angela said rapidly. "He knows about the embezzlement investigation and my suspension. He's threatening to make our situation public unless I provide him with current financial data and board meeting minutes." "Well, what exactly is he threatening?" I asked, putting the call on speaker so Thomas and David could hear the conversation. "He says Meridian has been planning a takeover attempt for months based on the information I provided," Angela admitted. "He claims they have enough insider knowledge to destroy our client relationships and force a distressed sale. He wants me to feed him real-time information about how the company is responding to the leadership transition." Thomas leaned forward toward the phone. "Angela, this is Thomas Richardson. Did you sign any documentation or agreements with Bradley regarding information sharing?" "No formal agreements," Angela replied. "But I did provide him with copies of confidential documents during our relationship. I thought I was impressing him with my access to strategic information. I didn't realize he was using me to gather intelligence for a corporate raid." The full scope of Angela's betrayal was becoming clear. She had not only stolen money from our family company, but she had also unwittingly provided a competitor with the information necessary to potentially destroy everything our grandfather had built. "Angela, I need you to come to the office immediately," I said. "We need to understand exactly what information you shared and develop a strategy to protect the company from this threat." "Are you sure you want me involved?" Angela asked. "My presence might make things worse for everyone." "You're the only person who knows exactly what Bradley has access to," I replied. "If we're going to defend against Meridian's takeover attempt, we need your complete cooperation and honesty about everything you shared during your relationship." 30 minutes later, Angela sat in the conference room looking exhausted and ashamed as she reviewed months of email exchanges with Bradley Stone. The extent of information sharing was staggering, but her insider knowledge of his tactics and Meridian's strategies provided our best opportunity to mount an effective defense. "Bradley's approach is always the same," Angela explained, pointing to patterns in their communications. "He identifies vulnerable family businesses, cultivates personal relationships with insider sources, then uses the intelligence to structure acquisition offers that exploit specific weaknesses." "What weaknesses do they think they can exploit at Hartwell?" Thomas asked. "They believe the leadership transition will create operational chaos," Angela replied. "Bradley expects major clients to become nervous about stability and start looking for alternative suppliers. Meridian's plan is to approach our biggest accounts with competing offers while simultaneously pressuring our board to accept a buyout." David was taking notes rapidly. "Who are their primary targets among our client base?" Angela produced a handwritten list from her purse. "These 12 accounts represent 60% of our annual revenue," she said. "Bradley has detailed information about contract renewal dates, pricing structures, and relationship management strategies for each client. He knows exactly when and how to approach them with competitive proposals." The situation was worse than I had initially realized, but Angela's willingness to cooperate completely gave us advantages that Meridian probably didn't expect. She understood their tactical approach and could help us develop countermeasures to protect our most important business relationships. "What's Bradley's timeline for the takeover attempt?" I asked. "He wants to move quickly while the company appears unstable," Angela said. "His plan is to contact board members within the next week to propose an acquisition discussion. He believes Harold and Eleanor will be receptive to selling if they think my legal problems will damage the company's reputation permanently." Thomas and David exchanged glances as we realized how little time we had to prepare our defense. Meridian Corp had been planning this attack for months based on inside information, while we had just learned about the threat. The next few days would determine whether Hartwell Industries survived as an independent family business or became another casualty of corporate raiders exploiting internal vulnerabilities. Angela looked directly at me with an expression I hadn't seen since childhood, when she used to apologize after breaking something valuable. "Rodney, I know I don't deserve your trust, but I want to help you stop Bradley from destroying what our family built. He manipulated me into betraying people I love, and I need to make that right." "Then help us fight back," I said, extending my hand across the conference table. "Show us everything you know about their strategy, and let's prove that Hartwell Industries is stronger than they realize." The war room we established in the executive conference area buzzed with activity as our small team prepared to counter Meridian Corp's acquisition attempt. Angela had provided detailed intelligence about Bradley Stone's tactics, while Thomas coordinated with our legal team and external consultants to develop defensive strategies. Over the next 5 days, we worked 18-hour shifts documenting our operational stability, strengthening client relationships, and preparing presentation materials that demonstrated Hartwell Industries' resilience despite recent leadership changes. Angela's insights into Meridian's approach proved invaluable, but her participation created emotional complications that required careful management. "Bradley will contact Margaret Foster first," Angela explained during one of our strategy sessions. "He knows she has significant influence with other board members, and he'll position the acquisition as a solution to potential legal liability from my embezzlement charges." I coordinated a preemptive meeting with Margaret to explain the situation before Bradley could manipulate her concerns. Margaret's response surprised me with its intensity and determination. "That manipulation attempt makes me angry," Margaret said firmly. "Bradley Stone is trying to exploit our family crisis to steal a company that your grandfather built through decades of honest work. We're going to fight back hard." James Wellington and Patricia Hayes expressed similar outrage when they learned about Meridian's tactics. Patricia's prosecutorial background proved particularly valuable as she helped us understand the legal implications of corporate espionage and insider information misuse. Bradley's use of confidential information that Angela provided could constitute industrial espionage, Patricia explained. "If we can document the specific intelligence he's using, we might be able to pursue legal action against Meridian Corp." Angela spent hours reconstructing every conversation and document exchange, with Bradley creating a detailed timeline that demonstrated systematic intelligence gathering disguised as personal relationship building. The pattern revealed sophisticated corporate espionage that went far beyond casual information sharing between romantic partners. "He was very strategic about timing his requests," Angela recalled. After romantic dinners or intimate conversations, he would casually ask about specific aspects of company operations. I thought he was interested in my work, but he was actually conducting industrial espionage. Thomas worked with our technology team to secure all computer systems and change access credentials for sensitive databases. We also implemented new information sharing protocols to prevent future security breaches, regardless of who might be involved in suspicious relationships. The breakthrough came on Thursday morning when Angela received a text message from Bradley requesting an urgent meeting. Instead of responding directly, she called me to discuss how we might turn his contact attempt into an opportunity to gather evidence of Meridian's illegal tactics. He wants to meet tonight to discuss how I can provide real-time information about board decisions, Angela explained. If I wear a recording device, we might be able to document his corporate espionage activities. Samuel Brennan advised caution about entrapment issues, but Patricia Hayes confirmed that recording conversations about ongoing criminal activities was legally permissible. We spent the afternoon preparing Angela for a meeting that could provide crucial evidence to stop Meridian's acquisition attempt. The recording equipment was sophisticated but undetectable, provided by a private investigation firm that Patricia recommended. Angela was nervous about confronting Bradley, but she was determined to help protect the company from the consequences of her previous betrayals. "Remember that your safety is more important than evidence gathering," I told Angela as she prepared to leave for the meeting. "If the situation becomes threatening, end the conversation and leave immediately." "I understand," Angela replied. "But I need to do this, Rodney. Bradley used my emotions to manipulate me into betraying our family. I want him to face consequences for what he's done to all of us." The meeting took place at an upscale restaurant in downtown Chicago, where Angela and Bradley had often dined during their relationship. Angela wore the recording device concealed in a brooch that appeared to be simple jewelry, while our private investigator monitored from a nearby table. The conversation Angela captured exceeded our expectations for documenting Meridian's illegal activities. Bradley not only requested specific confidential information, but he also outlined Meridian's entire acquisition strategy and revealed detailed knowledge of internal Hartwell operations that could only have come from industrial espionage. We know exactly which clients are most vulnerable to competitive pressure. Bradley said, apparently confident that Angela would continue cooperating with his plans. "Your financial reports and strategic planning documents have given us everything we need to target your most profitable relationships." "What happens to employees if Meridian acquires Hartwell?" Angela asked, following our prepared questions. "Significant restructuring will be necessary," Bradley replied dismissively. "We'll probably eliminate 40 to 50% of current positions and relocate operations to reduce overhead costs. Family businesses are typically overstaffed compared to corporate efficiency standards." The recording captured Bradley's admission that Meridian had been using Angela's confidential information for months to plan strategies that would devastate our workforce and destroy the company culture our grandfather had carefully developed. His casual attitude about eliminating dozens of jobs revealed the callous corporate mentality that viewed family businesses as sources of profit rather than community institutions. "When do you need the board meeting information?" Angela asked, maintaining her role despite obvious emotional distress. "Tomorrow morning?" Bradley responded. "We're planning to contact Harold and Eleanor this weekend with an acquisition proposal. Having advance notice of board discussions will help us structure the offer to exploit their specific concerns about your legal situation." Angela successfully concluded the meeting and returned to our offices with evidence that documented systematic corporate espionage and illegal use of confidential information. Samuel Brennan confirmed that we had sufficient documentation to pursue legal action against both Bradley and Meridian Corp. But the most surprising revelation came the next morning when Angela requested a private meeting with me before we contacted law enforcement. She had discovered something during her conversation with Bradley that changed her understanding of everything that had happened over the past year. "Rodney Bradley admitted something that I need to tell you," Angela said, her voice heavy with emotion. "The relationship between us wasn't accidental. Meridian specifically targeted me because they identified me as a source of intelligence about Hartwell Industries. What do you mean? I asked, though I was beginning to understand the implications. Bradley said they had been monitoring our family for 18 months, looking for vulnerabilities they could exploit. Angela continued. They knew about my insecurities regarding your role in the company, and they deliberately cultivated a romantic relationship to manipulate me into providing information. The full scope of Meridian's attack became clear. They had not simply taken advantage of Angela's willingness to share information. They had systematically targeted her emotional vulnerabilities to turn her into an unwitting agent of corporate espionage. There's more, Angela said quietly. Bradley revealed that Meridian had also been spreading rumors among our clients about potential instability at Hartwell Industries. Some of the business problems we've experienced over the past year weren't natural market forces. They were the result of deliberate sabotage designed to weaken our position before the acquisition attempt. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I realize now that some of my worst impulses and decisions were being encouraged by someone who was manipulating me to destroy our family, Angela replied. I'm responsible for my choices, but Bradley was deliberately pushing me toward increasingly destructive behavior to serve Meridian's acquisition strategy. That doesn't excuse the embezzlement or the attempt to frame me, I pointed out. No, it doesn't, Angela agreed. But it explains why my behavior became so much worse over the past year. Bradley was systematically undermining my relationship with you, with our parents, and with the company. He wanted me to become isolated and desperate enough to provide whatever information he requested. The manipulation had been sophisticated and cruel, targeting Angela's deepest insecurities to turn her into a weapon against her own family. While she remained responsible for her criminal choices, understanding Bradley's role provided context for how a flawed but fundamentally decent person could deteriorate into someone capable of embezzlement and fraud. What do you want to do with this information? I asked. I want to destroy Bradley Stone and Meridian Corp. Angela replied with more determination than she had shown in months. They used my emotions to attack our family, and they planned to eliminate dozens of jobs without caring about the lives they would destroy. We need to stop them and make sure they face consequences for what they've done. Together, we prepared to launch a counterattack that would not only protect Hartwell Industries from acquisition, but also expose Meridian's illegal tactics to law enforcement and potential clients. The next phase of our battle would test whether our family could work together effectively despite the damage that had been done to our relationships. 6 months later, the annual Hartwell Industries Charity Gala felt like a celebration of survival and renewal rather than a routine corporate social event. The Palmer House ballroom buzzed with conversation among employees, clients, and board members who had witnessed our family's public crisis and subsequent recovery. I stood at the podium, preparing to introduce the evening's keynote speaker, reflecting on everything that had changed since Angela's inauguration party disaster. Meridian Corp was facing federal investigation for corporate espionage and securities fraud, while Bradley Stone had been terminated and was cooperating with prosecutors to reduce his potential sentence. The legal victory had been satisfying, but the personal healing required much more complex work. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to introduce our Chief Strategy Officer, Angela Hartwell. I announced, watching surprised expressions ripple through the audience. Angela approached the microphone with the confident posture she had always possessed, but her demeanor reflected hard-earned humility rather than the entitled arrogance that had characterized her previous corporate appearances. The past 6 months of intensive therapy, legal consequences, and gradual reintegration had transformed her into someone I could genuinely respect as both a sister and a colleague. Thank you, Rodney. Angela began, her voice steady, despite the emotional weight of addressing employees she had previously betrayed. 6 months ago, I stood in front of many of you and demonstrated everything that was wrong with privileged leadership and family business nepotism. Tonight, I want to speak about accountability redemption and the patience you've shown, while I learned to become someone worthy of your trust." The audience listened intently as Angela described her journey through federal investigation, financial restitution, and psychological treatment. She spoke honestly about the therapy sessions that had helped her understand how insecurity and entitlement had corrupted her decision-making, and how systematic manipulation from Meridian Corp had exploited her worst impulses. "I embezzled $837,000 from this company over 3 years." Angela continued, her voice unwavering, as she stated facts that could have sent her to federal prison. "I fired employees who questioned my authority. I manipulated information to serve my ego, and I attempted to frame my brother for crimes I committed. Those actions were inexcusable, regardless of external pressure or personal struggles." Thomas Richardson, now serving as Chief Financial Officer, nodded approvingly from his table near the stage. His courage in exposing Angela's crimes had saved the company, and his ongoing work implementing financial oversight systems ensured that similar problems could never develop undetected. The federal prosecution was resolved through a plea agreement that required complete restitution, 200 hours of community service, and ongoing psychological evaluation. Angela explained. "More importantly, my reintegration into this company has been contingent on demonstrating genuine character change rather than simply avoiding prison time." Harold and Eleanor sat at the family table, their faces reflecting pride in both their children's growth and sadness about the pain required to achieve that maturity. Family therapy sessions with Dr. Catherine Morris had helped all of us understand how enabling behavior and favoritism had contributed to the crisis, while also providing tools for building healthier relationships going forward. "The most important lesson I've learned is that leadership requires serving others rather than serving yourself," Angela continued. "Rodney has demonstrated that principle consistently, while I spent years viewing this company as a platform for personal validation. The employees I fired deserved better, the clients I disappointed deserved better, and my family deserved better." Jenny Martinez. Robert Chen and Lisa Thompson sat together at a table near the front, having returned to the company with promotions and public acknowledgement of their ethical courage. Their willingness to rejoin Hartwell Industries after Angela's public apology and personal meetings demonstrated the healing that was possible when accountability was genuine rather than performative. "Our victory over Meridian Corp's acquisition attempt required cooperation between Rodney and me for the first time in our adult lives," Angela said, looking directly at me with an expression of genuine gratitude. "Working together to protect what our grandfather built taught me that family businesses succeed when family members support each other rather than competing for dominance." The legal battle against Meridian had concluded with a settlement that included financial compensation for damages and public acknowledgement of their corporate espionage activities. More satisfying was the impact on their reputation within the business community, where their illegal tactics had become widely known and resulted in lost acquisition opportunities. Susan Miller, our senior accountant who had provided crucial support during the crisis, received recognition for her role in implementing new financial transparency measures. David Park was promoted to Executive Vice President, reflecting his loyalty and competence during our most difficult period. The employee recognition portion of the evening celebrated people whose integrity had sustained the company when leadership failed. The new Ethical Oversight Committee, chaired by Patricia Hayes, and including employee representatives from every department, ensures that financial accountability and workplace fairness are maintained regardless of who holds executive positions, Angela explained. "These systems exist specifically to prevent future repetition of my failures." Margaret Foster and James Wellington had been instrumental in restructuring board governance to include independent oversight and mandatory financial auditing. Their experience during the crisis had reinforced their commitment to protecting Hartwell Industries from both external threats and internal corruption. As Angela concluded her remarks and returned to our table, I felt a complex mixture of emotions that included pride, relief, and cautious optimism about our relationship's future. The sister who had tried to destroy my career and reputation had become someone I could trust with significant corporate responsibilities, but that transformation required constant vigilance and ongoing commitment to accountability. Our final announcement tonight involves the establishment of the William Hartwell Foundation for Business Ethics Education, I said, returning to the podium for closing remarks. This foundation will provide scholarships and training programs to help family businesses develop ethical leadership practices and avoid the mistakes that nearly destroyed our company. The foundation represented our commitment to transforming personal crisis into community benefit, using resources generated by Hartwell Industries recovery to help other families navigate succession challenges without compromising their values or relationships. Family businesses represent the heart of American economic opportunity. I continued. When they succeed ethically, they create jobs, support communities, and preserve values across generations. When they fail due to internal corruption or external manipulation, entire communities suffer the consequences. Our foundation will help families learn from our mistakes rather than repeat them. Angela joined me on stage as we unveiled plans for the foundation's initial programs, including partnerships with business schools and family business organizations throughout the Midwest. Our collaboration on the foundation had become a model for how we could work together effectively while maintaining appropriate oversight and accountability. As the evening concluded with dancing and informal conversation, I reflected on the journey from Angela's betrayal at the inauguration party to our current partnership in leading Hartwell Industries toward a sustainable future. The company was stronger than it had been before the crisis, with better financial controls, more ethical leadership practices, and a workforce that understood their role in maintaining integrity. Harold approached me as I was saying goodbye to departing guests. "Your grandfather would be proud of how you handled this crisis," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "You saved the company while also saving your sister. That required wisdom beyond your years. We all saved each other," I replied, watching Angela help elderly board member Margaret Foster with her coat. The crisis revealed problems that needed to be addressed, but the recovery required everyone to choose accountability over self-protection. Eleanor hugged me tightly as our family prepared to leave together. "I'm sorry it took a crisis for us to learn how to be honest with each other," she said. "But I'm grateful that we learned before it was too late to rebuild our relationships." Driving home through downtown Chicago, I thought about the question that had haunted me throughout the legal battles and family therapy sessions, whether justice and mercy could coexist when someone you loved had committed serious crimes against people you cared about. The answer required rejecting false choices between punishment and forgiveness, instead creating space for accountability that included opportunities for redemption. Angela had faced federal prosecution, made complete financial restitution, and accepted ongoing oversight of her corporate responsibilities. But she had also been given the chance to prove that people could change when they were willing to do the difficult work of examining their motivations and learning from their mistakes. That second chance was not guaranteed. It had to be earned through consistent ethical behavior and genuine service to others, rather than self-interest. The company our grandfather founded continued operating according to principles he would recognize and respect, staffed by employees who understood that ethical leadership was their responsibility, regardless of their position in the organizational hierarchy. The family relationships that had been damaged by years of manipulation and favoritism were slowly healing through honest communication and mutual accountability. Most importantly, Angela and I had learned to work together as partners rather than competitors, combining our different strengths to to serve something larger than our individual ambitions. The brother and sister, who had nearly destroyed each other, had become allies committed to preserving what previous generations built while improving it for future generations. The lessons learned through our crisis would continue shaping Hartwell Industries for years to come, but the foundation was solid family businesses. Thrive when they prioritize integrity over profit, accountability over loyalty, and service over self-interest. These principles had guided our grandfather's original vision, and they would guide our stewardship of his legacy. As I reflected on this journey from betrayal to redemption, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right when someone you loved was making destructive choices? How do you balance accountability with compassion when the stakes are high? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about real family challenges and triumphs. Don't forget to share this with anyone who might benefit from understanding that redemption is possible when people are willing to face the truth about their mistakes and work consistently to become better. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey, and I wish you wisdom and courage in your own family relationships and leadership challenges.